Hi, I'm Peter Tragos, host of the Lawyer You Know podcast and YouTube channel. The saying goes, everyone hates lawyers until you need one. Well, I'm here when you need one to answer your questions and give you insight that you didn't know you needed. Along with my partners, Pete Sardis, the professor, who has a finance and business background, and George Tragos, my dad, and the consigliere, a criminal defense giant, we can answer any questions you have.
Hi everybody, Pete Sardis for the Lawyer You Know. Recently, we did an episode on Vicky White, who was the Deputy Chief of Corrections in Lauderdale, Alabama, and her love interest, Casey White, no relation, where she winds up breaking this convicted felon and accused murderer out of jail. They go on a multi-day flight from law enforcement, which winds up ending in a car crash with federal agents, where Vicky White takes her own life and Casey White is returned back to custody. So when I was doing this episode, I was thinking to myself, we see crazy stuff in the news, but then again, that's just the stuff that's highlighted in the news or in the media. And I was curious, is this really that prevalent? Does this happen? Well, interestingly enough, I found that there are statistics that are held by the federal government that actually trace this phenomenon. And it is more common than you may think. All right, based on what I found in the research, it seems as if jailhouse romances are very common, frankly, unreasonably common. And of those jailhouse romances, about 48% of those romances are between an inmate and someone of authority. For example, a guard or a counselor or somebody that is a person of authority inside of that jail. Obviously, the 52% are inmate with inmate. Now, of those 48% where there is an inmate and somebody from the corrections facility involved in this romance, 84% of those relationships involve a female guard or someone of authority and a male inmate, while only about 37% actually involve inmates that are female and guards that are male. To be clear, what they've done in this study is they've picked out voluntary and willing relationships. So when you take out the horrible stuff that happens in prisons and in jails out of the equation, we're left with just those relationships where the parties are entering into these relationships willfully and willingly without coercion. And that seems to show that about 84% of those relationships are women security guards with male inmates, which I thought was a shocking number. I will tell you that in those statistics, the research seems to indicate that there's a lot more of this happening as time progresses because there are more and more female security officers taking roles within male facilities than there used to be. Obviously, there were always male security in male security prisons, and there were always male and female security in female prisons. But now we're seeing a lot more women that are actually taking jobs in male corrections facilities. So the numbers, or I should say the prevalence of these jailhouse romances seems to be increasing. Within these studies, there are some psychological tell signs about why women security guards fall for these jailhouse inmates. It seems to indicate that the life of a jail security officer is a difficult one, averaging 16 hours a day, a lot of overtime, a lot of weekends, a lot of times when everybody else is out, for example, holiday times, enjoying time with their families while they're in the facility, doing their jobs. And because of that, it seems as if there is a void in a lot of female security officers' lives, and that void is filled by an inmate that is willing to provide attention, willing to provide compliments, willing to make that female security officer feel, like a woman. Now, when you look at the statistics of the people that have done this, everybody, or I shouldn't say everybody, the vast majority of these women that are involved in these jailhouse relationships understand that what they're doing is dangerous. They recognize that what they are doing is wrong and illegal, but still, the attraction to that attention, to that relationship is so strong that they basically rationalize that what they're doing is for love and it's for a good thing, so they're willing to risk, in Vicky White's circumstance, everything, literally everything. to engage in these romances. What I want to do today is I want to focus on some of the jailhouse romances that I have found in my research. Now, I want to put it out there. There are male security guards that have relationships with female inmates that are also willing. Again, there's 30-something% of those. But the really, really meaty, juicy ones seem to be the ones where there's a female guard willing to risk everything for that jailhouse love interest. I'm going to focus on those. But before we do that, if you're enjoying the episode, give me a thumbs up. If you're enjoying our series or any of the series that we do here at The Lawyer You Know, please subscribe to our channel. And as always, if you have questions and comments, leave them down below. All right, number one, a woman by the name of Joyce Mitchell. It's 2015 in New York, and Joyce Mitchell is a seamstress at a prison facility. And she meets two guys by the name of Richard, Matt, and David Sweet. And these two individuals they're housed in the correction facility in Dannemora, New York. So what happens? She winds up engaging in a three-way relationship. A love triangle is probably the best way to explain it with these two individuals. She winds up smuggling them tools inside of frozen meat. So I'm thinking like Shawshank Redemption kind of stuff, where these two guys hack their way out of their jail cell into the underground tunnel at the prison, which houses all of the sewage lines and all of the piping that feeds the jail. And they literally spend a month on the run because Joyce Mitchell is there when they get out of the sewer on the back end with clothes and soap to clean them up, get them in the car, and they take off. So these three are on the run for about a month when they're identified near the Canadian border. Let me tell you how big of a manhunt this was. It took 1,000 law enforcement officers and about $20 million of resources to track these three down. When they finally find the trio, Matt winds up being shot and killed by law enforcement. Sweet winds up being shot also, but he survives and he's transferred back to Attica. And Mitchell, who masterminds this whole thing, is prosecuted and convicted for the jailbreak and obviously having sexual relationships with inmates, which is also illegal if you didn't know, and is sentenced to 7 years in prison. Now, the crazy part of all this is that while all of this jailhouse love triangle romance is going on, Mitchell is married and basically abandons her husband and her family for these two jailbirds. The plan obviously being to go from New York to escape into the wilderness of Canada and live their lives apparently in blissful harmony in the freedom of the wilderness. Obviously didn't happen, and she winds up going to prison and was released in 2020, so she's back out on the street. Number two, another love triangle. Brett Robinson and Jill Curry. It's 2015 in Oregon, and these two jail staffers admit to having sex with an inmate. His name is Jengli Delgado Galban. And this guy apparently is so slick that he engages in a romantic relationship with both Brett Robinson and Jill Curry. But wait, he does it separately. They don't know that the other one exists. Okay, to make matters worse, Brett Robinson actually becomes pregnant with this guy's baby while she's having a relationship with him in the jail. Ultimately, law enforcement catches on that there's something going on between these inmates, especially what winds up happening is Jill Curry wound up taking this guy out of his jail cell to take him to a utility closet to have sex with him one day. And it was just an odd time. She's like, why does she have him out? Now is not the time to be doing this. So somebody goes and checks and figures out what's going on. So to add insult to injury, Curry gets arrested. They obviously charge Delgado Galban with another set of crimes. He, at which point, tells them about the relationship with Brett Robinson, since she's in fact pregnant with his child, and the law enforcement officers file charges with the district attorney's office. Who's the star witness? Yep, you guessed it. Delgado Galban testifies against them in their trials for having inappropriate sexual contact with an inmate. Obviously, they're both convicted, they lose their jobs, and life goes on. Number three, Nancy Gonzalez. It's 2012 in Brooklyn, New York. And Nancy Gonzalez is 29 years old, and she starts an illicit relationship with an inmate by the name of Ronnell Wilson, who is on death row for killing a police officer in Brooklyn, New York. So Nancy Gonzalez gets figured out when they do a search of Ronell Wilson's cell and find like a cell phone and some contraband. So they wind up trying to figure out what's happening, and they identify the relationship. At the time they identify that she is having sex with Ronell Wilson, she actually finds out that she's pregnant with his baby. Great, here we go again, right? Ultimately, she's prosecuted for introducing contraband into the jail. She winds up having the baby. Hold on for this, ladies and gentlemen. She has the baby, and at some point, she winds up going to a family function of Ronell Wilson's family. They're having some sort of a picnic or something, and she shows up with the baby to be part of the family. The family tells her, now that you have this baby, you have got to tell law enforcement. You got to make some story up and say that you need him because he's father of your child and he can't be put to death, and find something to say in order to get this death sentence overturned. She may not be completely crazy, so she realizes lying to law enforcement is just an even bigger crime, so she refuses to do it. Ultimately, what winds up happening is the family calls her probation officer at the party when she says that she's unwilling to do this, and they report her. Consequently, she was sentenced to a year and a day in prison for having this illicit relationship with Ronell Wilson, and she's on probation. So the family calls a probation officer. He comes down to the house party that the family of Ronell Wilson is having, and they say, she's on probation, she's not supposed to be drinking, look what's in her hand. She winds up then having to go back to the judge to explain why she, after having an illicit relationship with an inmate, fathering his child while on probation, goes to a house party and breaches the terms of her probation by drinking alcohol. Her response is, well, they wanted me to lie about him as an inmate, and they wanted me to make things up so you would overturn his death sentence. Obviously, she winds up getting in a little bit more trouble, obviously, for the probation violation, and Ronell Wilson and his family do not get the break that they're hoping for. All right, the next person, Tina Gonzalez, age 26, Fresno, California, 2018. So she is a corrections officer, and she is accused of having sex with an inmate in front of 11 other people. So what happens? She engages in a relationship with an inmate whose name will remain nameless because he's considered a victim of a sexual crime while he's an inmate at, obviously, the jail in Fresno. Ultimately, the facts come out that she is providing him favors. He's getting, cigarettes, he's got cell phones, and obviously she's having sex with him. She, in fact, cuts a hole in her uniform so that she can more easily engage in sexual activity with this inmate. Again, a standard search of this inmate's property reveals that he's got contraband, which is the cell phone and some cigarettes, so they figure out something's wrong. Ultimately, somebody snitches because she had sex with him in front of 11 other people. So she wasn't concerned about being found out. In fact, based on my representation, she was proud of what she was doing. Ultimately, what happens, she gets arrested, and in the investigation that ensues after her arrest, she testifies that she was going through a nasty breakup, and because of that nasty breakup, she just was looking for somebody to love her, and apparently this inmate was the guy. She winds up serving 210 days in custody, and then she gets 2 years of probation. Obviously, her illustrious law enforcement career ends at that point. Now let's go to number 5, Toby Young. Leavenworth, Kansas, 2004. Toby Young is 48 years old when she helps a guy by the name of John Maynard, who's only 28, escape from a maximum security Kansas prison, get this, inside of a dog crate. And let's figure out how this all happens. So let's kind of figure out how all this happens. Toby Young is a cancer survivor. As part of her mission after cancer remission, she winds up starting a program for the Department of Corrections that brings dogs into the jail, and it's supposed to be therapeutic kind of on both sides, meaning the dogs are being helped because they have someone to care for them, the inmates, and the inmates are getting some sort of psychological help or some therapy by being able to interact with the dogs. Sounds like such a great program that the Department of Corrections lets her do it, and it is so successful that they give her free access to and from the jail, meaning she can show up with her dogs whenever she wants, comes into the jail, does whatever she wants, and winds up being pretty much a model of prison therapy. So then what happens? Some inmate winds up threatening Toby Young, and after that threat, the law enforcement and leadership at the jail determined that she needs to have a little bit of security because she just can't be walking around the guards of a men's maximum security prison without some sort of an escort. Makes sense, right? So who do they give her as an escort? Convicted murderer John Maynard. Yes. Out of all the people that are at the jail that are trained to provide security services, i.e. the guards, they pick a convicted murderer to be her escort. So he winds up walking around everywhere, wherever she goes. Obviously, love interest ensues, and a couple of days before Valentine's Day, because I love a romantic story, she has discovered that the prison guards don't check the dog crates. So what she tells Maynard is, Maynard, you got to lose some weight because I can't lift you inside of a dog crate to get you out of the jail. He loses 25 pounds, winds up stuffing himself in a dog crate one day, and she walks him out of the jail inside the dog crate. Law enforcement never even checks. Now, that sounds like a pretty substantial feat, putting a man inside of a dog crate, until you realize Maynard is 6'2". So she fit a 6'2" man inside of a dog crate and carried him out of a jail. Hey, where there's a will, obviously there's a way. During this part of her life, Toby Young is married. She takes her $42,000, which is the entirety of her retirement savings. She buys a 1997 Chevy pickup truck, and she takes Maynard, sticks him in the truck, and takes off to Tennessee, where they're living in some cabin that she rented for about 12 days until they're captured. So, obviously they're captured. Maynard goes back to prison. She pleads guilty in 2006 for helping Maynard escape and providing a firearm to a known felon. She serves 27 months in prison. After she gets out, she writes a book. So if you want to look her up, Toby Young, she actually wrote a book about her experience and talks about why she did what she did, the emotional connection she had with Maynard, and obviously all the reasons involved in how the romance started, how it continued, how she decided to break this man out of jail and flee from her life into, again, bliss in the wilderness, which obviously was short-lived for 12 days. All right, number 6, we're leaving the country because I didn't want you to think that this is only a phenomenon that happens in the United States. We're going to go down under. Melissa Godwin, age 25, from Sydney, Australia, and it's 2020, 2 years ago. She's a prison guard at the Metropolitan Remand and Reception Center in Silverwater, Australia. She admits to having sex with an inmate by the name of Corey London. She winds up, again, getting into a relationship. She provided him tobacco, cigarettes, lighters, chewing gum, and at some point falls in love with this guy. This is not really any different than the rest of the stories that we've been talking about, except for, wait for it, Melissa Godwin on her off times is a semi-professional fitness model and bodybuilder. The Sydney Times nicknames her the glamorous Melissa Godwin. She winds up pleading no contest to one count of engaging with sexual activity with an inmate. She says through her lawyer that, she doesn't admit the conduct, but recognizes she can't fight the charges, and winds up being sentenced to whatever the sentence is in Australia, which I couldn't find. But check that one out. Really just strange as strange can be. Number 7, again, outside of the United States, we're going to Buckinghamshire, England, and it's 2008. Kelly Ann McDade winds up getting pregnant by an inmate whose name is Nelson Delgado. He is an inmate at Her Majesty's Aylesbury Young Offenders Institute in Buckinghamshire, England. So what winds up happening is they start some love affair. She gets pregnant. She never tells her colleagues at the jail who the father is. She claims that she went on vacation and had some crazy one-night stand and got pregnant. But at some point, this is England, so everything is on closed circuit TV. They review the closed circuit TV and they realize that it's McDade taking Delgado out of his cell at strange times of the night. Now, you're going to say, what tipped them off? What made them want to go look at the closed circuit TV to figure out what was going on? It's because McDade actually went to the local newspaper and did an expose story about prison love and how she was in love with Delgado and having sex with him inside of the jail. Think about that for a second. How he had fathered her baby, and how she was having this illicit relationship with him at the jail. So what then happens? Obviously, law enforcement goes back and looks at the CCTV footage and, well, sure enough, she's right. And that's what winds up happening. That's how they caught her. And obviously, as soon as the story broke, she was arrested. The jail actually winds up doing an investigation. They found out not only is she having sex with this guy, but she's introducing contraband into the jail. Again, cell phones and cigarettes. That's pretty much what everybody wants in jail, apparently. No, she gets sentenced to 30 months in prison. But listen to what the sentence looks like. It is 18 months for smuggling contraband into the jail and 12 months for misconduct of a public officer. So apparently it is worse to smuggle a cell phone into the jail than it is to have sex with an inmate in England. So just know that. Regardless, she winds up going to prison for 30 months. She has the baby, and her plan was that as soon as Delgado is released from custody, they're going to start this happy life together as one big family. So, hey, Kellyanne McDade and Nelson Delgado, really wishing you guys the best of luck. Numbers 8, 9, and 10. This one's my favorite, so I've saved it for last. You're in Baltimore, it's 2013, and there's a gentleman by the name of Tavon White. Tavon White is not only an inmate, but apparently he is a very notorious and very dangerous gang leader in Baltimore. The name of the gang is the Black Gorilla Family. You can't make this stuff up. So what winds up happening is, of course, he is accused of having sexual relationships with a security guard, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 different security guards while he's sitting in the Baltimore jail. And he has some children. Not 1, not 2, oh, not 3, or even 4. Hold on. 5. Tavon White fathered 5 children by 4 different security guards while he is in the Baltimore jail. I'm going to go through each one of these individually because this guy is obviously the king of, I'm not even sure what that would be. I guess this is a love pentagon since there's 4 women and himself. Insanity. All right, let's go with the first one. Tiffany Linder is a Washington, D.C. native and was 27 years old when she started her relationship with Tavon White. She winds up tipping off law enforcement. There is a love circle or love square or love, pentagon, whatever this is, going on in the jail. When she finds out that Tavon White is having a relationship with another security guard at the jail while Linda is 8 months pregnant. That other security guard's name is Chania Brooks, also 27. Engaged in some sexual relation with Tavon White. She winds up getting pregnant. And her story to law enforcement when she was arrested was that she was only making $38,000 a year as a corrections officer, which wasn't a lot of money for Baltimore back in 2013. So the lifestyle that Tavon White was able to provide for her outside of the jail included money, nice clothes, a nice house, and a Mercedes-Benz was better than what the state of Maryland could provide, at which point she loved him and was having his baby. How did Chania Brooks get figured out? Well, Tiffany Linder finds out about Chania Brooks and tells law enforcement about the relationship. In the meantime, during the investigation of Chania Brooks and Lindell, since obviously they realized why she was upset that Brooks was having sex with White, they identify additional relationships with Katrina Stevenson, who was 26, who was having sex with Tavon White back at the Baltimore City Detention Center since 2008. She says she fell in love with him. Of course, he provided the same beautiful house, Mercedes-Benz, nice clothes. Obviously, gang leader, a lot of illicit money on the outside. She winds up getting pregnant while she was 24 years old by him, and they figure her out that it's her because at some point she had left some contraband out in the yard, and they found the contraband that they hadn't figured out it was her. And they kind of put two and two together that she's pregnant, having a baby, there was contraband, this guy's got two additional baby mamas in the jail, and they tie her into this love, whatever it is. Jennifer Owens is the final lady, and she is 32 years old, and she's a resident of Rawlingstown, Maryland. She loved Tavon White so much that she tattooed his name on her neck. She gave birth to two of his children while working at the Baltimore jail. Think about that. Two kids by this guy. Winds up tattooing his name on her neck, which obviously led the security staff at the jail to wonder, why would she put Tavon White's name on her neck? Investigation ensues, and they basically find out that she has had this love affair, and they find out about the kids. So they all go to trial, right? Again, who's the star witness? You got it. The wonderful provider, Tavon White. He testifies against these four women and, frankly, against some of his Black Guerrilla family brothers, and winds up getting a reduction in the 12-year prison sentence that he was serving while in the Department of Corrections in Maryland. So let's try that one again. With that, I'm certain that there are many, many more stories. I'm certain we're going to see more of this in the future. But for now, if you enjoyed the episode, give me a thumbs up. If you enjoy the series that we do here on The Lawyer You Know, please subscribe to our channel. And as always, leave us questions and comments down below. See you next time.
Thanks for watching this episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you like this content, please share it with your friends. Make sure you subscribe to our page and like our videos. If you want some interaction, get in the comments and we'll be sure to get back to you. If you want to know any more information about our firm or this page, you can find out in the description or visit tragoslaw.com. We post multiple times throughout the week, so make sure you hit that bell so you can get the notification and not miss out on the next episode.